I'd like to tell you a story about a time that I believe 100% my intuition saved my life. Back in 2022, my late husband Mark was very sick off and on, and in August of 22, he had cellulitis very bad in his legs and went to the hospital, was in the hospital for the better part of 2 weeks, was on IV antibiotics and very, very, very strong pain medications, fentanyl and Dilaudid at various times. And so at the end of the 2 weeks, he was still in pain. I don't think his cellulitis had resolved. It didn't seem to. And yet the doctors were very adamant about discharging him, which I was really pissed off about. But not only that, because they were like in the process of weaning him off of these strong painkillers, he was literally out of his mind. He wasn't making any sense. He was seeing things that weren't there. And it was very clear he was just not with it. He was just not himself. And so as the doctor's trying to discharge him, I said, not only is he still in pain, but look at him, listen to him. He's not making any sense. And so the doctor said, oh, well, eventually he'll come out of it. It's just the withdrawal from the painkillers. I was like, great. This is a wonderful situation. Thank you. But he insisted, and they discharged Mark. So he didn't make any sense all throughout the afternoon. I sat with him. He was up pretty much all night, seeing things that weren't there, trying to go outside. So I had to spend the night basically awake with him. And the next morning, I had decided that if by that afternoon he was still just as bad, I was going to call 911 and have him go back to the hospital. But that morning, I guess about late morning, we were in the living room sitting on the couch, and Mark got up and went into the bathroom and shut the door. And a few seconds after he shut the door, I had this thought, but it seemed like the thought came from outside of myself, like a bolt from the blue. And it said, find the loaded pistol that Mark has in the pantry and hide it right now. Now, I have to say, Mark was a firearms enthusiast from way back. He had sort of a small gun collection that were never loaded, but he had one pistol in the pantry that he always kept loaded for emergencies. Now, we've never had any children in this place, so don't worry about people finding it who aren't supposed to find it. But it's always been there, and he's made me aware it was there. So this voice came and said, hide it right now. And so I sort of argued against the voice and said, why? Mark has never threatened me in the past that he was going to hurt me. He certainly hasn't threatened me now. Why are you telling me to hide this? And the voice came again, get the pistol and hide it now. And so I argued again. I was like, I don't feel threatened by Mark. What's going on? And I got another thought, and that was, you need to hide it. And that way you'll know where it is. It's a loaded pistol. And if Mark decides that he can't find this pistol and he is going to load one of his other guns, you'll know where the loaded pistol is, and you could hold it on him and make sure he doesn't load any of the other guns. And that was the point at which I was like, okay, this isn't coming from me. This is coming from outside of me. And I need to heed this warning, as much as it may not make sense to me. So I tiptoed into the pantry. I found the pistol. I went into the bedroom, put it in my bedside table underneath a whole bunch of other stuff. And I went quietly back into the living room and sat down and opened up my book like I was reading. So a couple of minutes later, Mark came out of the bathroom and he went and sat in his easy chair. And after a minute or two, he jumped up and ran into the pantry and was going through all the stuff that I just went through where I found the pistol. And so he came out and he said, where's that loaded pistol that I keep in the pantry? And that was like the most coherent sentence he had said in 24 hours. And I said, oh, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. And I tried to change the subject. And he said, once again, he said, where is that loaded pistol that I keep in the pantry? And once again, I brought up something else. I said I didn't know what he was talking about, and I started another whole subject. And because of the way his brain was working at that time, I was able to move him away from the path of talking about this pistol and on to something else. And luckily, he never brought up the pistol again. And it wasn't until very late that night that he started making sense again. It was a really, really tough time, and they never should have discharged him in that condition, but that's another story. So I've thought about this a lot over the past few years, and I really believe that having that bolt from the blue saved a life, possibly my life. I think Mark either was going to shoot an imaginary person in the room. I think he was either going to shoot me, a person like me, but he thought it was another person, or himself. I really do. I think he planned to do something with it, and whatever that something was, it would have been disastrous, and it potentially could have ended in my death or both of our deaths. And that is why from then on, whenever I have had a thought that seemed like it was coming from outside myself, I always heed that warning, because I know it's very important and could even potentially save my life. If you have a story about how intuition has saved your life, or you think probably saved your life, please tell me in the comments. Thanks.